Blessed day, guys, and peace be upon you today. So in this video, we're going to configure what's called 802.1q or trunk native VLANs using Cisco Packet Tracer tool. Okay, so before we can go into the configuration part, allow me to open this Google spreadsheet and let you know that today you are in the 4th class under switching technologies. Okay, all right. So after that one, I'll just open PPT so that we can understand what native VLAN means. So we see by default all switch ports belong to the default VLAN 1. Okay, so we see that when our frame traverses a trunk port, a VLAN tag is added to distinguish which frame belong to which VLAN. Okay, so access port do not require VLAN tag since all incoming and outgoing frames belong to a single VLAN. The native VLAN is simply one VLAN that traverses a trunk port without a VLAN tag. So when we are using a default VLAN through the trunk, we see that each frame is given a tag, a VLAN tag, to distinguish it from other frames on other VLANs. Okay, so but on native VLAN we have default VLAN through the trunk and native VLAN through the trunk. So for the native VLAN to the trunk, it just is simply one VLAN that traverses through the trunk port. So we can see that when we configure trunk port to the native VLAN, and whatever traffic arrives on that port without an existing VLAN tag gets associated with your VLAN, native VLAN. Okay, so for example, when a traffic arrives at the trunk port without a VLAN tag, that traffic is turned into, its VLAN ID is turned into the configured native VLAN. Okay, all right. So without any further ado, you can research more about native VLAN. It's a lot of study material that you need to understand. Okay, this is just a very quick and a shallow understanding. Okay, so for better understanding, kindly use Google. Okay, all right. So I already drew this topology here so that it can help us understand how to configure trunk native or 802.1q native VLANs configuration. Okay, all right. So also I prepared this notepad to highlight the steps. The first step is always to draw necessary topology, decorate and comment. Okay, so for example, this is our topology here. We have two switches and on each side we have a PC just for a demo. Okay, but our main concern is the trunk. Okay, the links between the two switches. Okay, all right. So we're not going to touch the PC or any other access port. All right, so create VLANs and name them. So I'm going to create let's say 3 VLANs per switch. Let's say VLAN 10, VLAN 20, and VLAN 99, something like that. So I'm going to name VLAN 99 as our native VLAN. Okay, all right. So I come here. So we create, that was the third step. Okay, the second step, I mean, create VLANs and name them. Okay, so how do we create VLAN? Enable config T, and we just say VLAN 10, name let's say IT, then VLAN 20, let's name it as HR. Okay, then I want to create VLAN 99 and name it as a native. Okay, exit. So do show VLAN. You see we have 3 VLANs here, 10, 20 and 99. So VLAN 99 is going to be our native VLAN, right? Okay, so let's go to the other switch to configure VLAN 10, 20 and 99. All right, so I enable config T, VLAN 10, name it as IT, VLAN 20 to be our HR, and finally VLAN 99 to be our native. Okay, all right. Okay, so the third step tells us that we identify trunk links and configure them. So when we look into this topology here, we see that any link connecting the two switches should be the trunk links. So you can see we have how many links here? 2 links between these two switches. FA1 on top, FA2 at bottom, also on this side. Okay, FA1, FA2. So we should make FA1 and FA2 to be trunk ports. Okay, all right. So what we're gonna do, just say interface range FA0/1 to 2. Okay, because there are 2 and you want to configure the same parameters. Okay, so just say switch port mode trunk, and that's all. So we come back here, we come back on this switch and make FA1 and FA2 to interface to have FA0/1 to 2. So we just say switch port mode trunk. That's all. All right, so the next step tells us that we should display the current native VLAN through the trunk. How do we display the current native VLAN to the trunk? Or how do we know the native VLAN? It's very, very simple command. We just say do show interface trunk. Okay, and you hit enter. You can see they are still under native VLAN. VLAN 1. What we saw here, but by default all switch ports belong to default VLAN 1. Okay, so here when a frame traverses trunk port, a VLAN tag is added to distinguish which frame belong to which VLAN. So this is the case here. Okay, whenever any frame will be passing through this trunk interface, a VLAN tag will be added to distinguish which frame is from which VLAN. Okay, all right. So we want a situation whereby, let me show you on this side also. Do show interface trunk. So you see, native VLAN, the default VLAN is default native VLAN is, you can see it as VLAN 1. Okay, the native VLAN. Okay, all right. But we have all our VLANs configured here. So we want to make these two interfaces to have a native VLAN of 99. So how do we do it? Let me go back to our steps and see. Configure native VLANs on the trunk links. So it's very, very simple. When I come to switch 0, you just configure the native VLAN on the trunk links. The trunk links are this one, FA1 and FA2. Just say switch port trunk native VLAN to be 99. Very simple, and hit enter, and make sure the native VLAN matches on this side and on this side. Okay, very simple, and you just say exit. Come on this side and configure native VLAN on the two interfaces. You can see I have received a message, a warning here, native VLAN mismatch discovered. So make sure the native VLAN here and here are consistent, they are similar. Okay, so I'll just go to these two interfaces and configure native VLAN. So I just say switch port trunk native VLAN to be 99 and hit enter. Oh, native VLAN to be 99 and I hit enter, and I just say, you can see port consistency restored. Initially they were blocked because the native VLANs were mismatching. Now they've been unblocked, and you see the port consistency is now restored. Make sure the VLAN, the native VLAN on both sides is the same. Okay, so if you can just say do show interface trunk, you see this now, the native VLAN has changed to 99. And guys, it's very important for security purpose to always change the native VLAN. So you can read more about what native VLAN means, so that you can understand and some of the security implication of the default VLAN. Okay, so it's very simple. It's very simple. And now if I can also go to the other switch 0 and say do show interface trunk, you will see do show. You see the native VLAN is now 99. Very simple. And I'll go back to our Google spreadsheet and mark configuring native VLAN as done, because very simple video. If you don't understand what VLAN native VLAN means, kindly research more about it. This course was just all about recap. You see here, it was all about recap. Yes, so I don't need to explain a lot of things here because we need to beat the time, right? Okay, so thank you so much guys, and I believe this video really helped you a lot to learn how to configure native VLAN. So tomorrow when we meet, we're going to do remote access using telnet. The other day SSH, then we go to EtherChannel. We need to go to port security, etc until we reach to IPv6 for firewall. So guys, I really plead with you, don't take this training for granted. These are all what we're going to use for our enterprise networking training, and every piece of information that we share here, kindly take it seriously and learn how to configure everything the way we do it. So thank you so much. Please share this video, subscribe below, like the video, and drop a comment so that we can also be motivated to continue providing the quality resources. Thank you so much.